November 23rd, 2016, Canadian, Texas. 18-year-old Tom Brown is out cruising with friends the night before Thanksgiving. When he says goodbye to the last buddy at 11:15, he takes his car and fills it up at a nearby convenience store and still has plenty of time to make it home by his curfew, midnight. But Tom never made it home that night. When his remains are found 2 years later, the rumor mill, which was already on full tilt, cranked up another notch. Now it's been 9 years, and after radio shows, podcasts, articles, nearly every law enforcement agency you can think of, a local sheriff, and one private investigator, no arrests have been made, and everyone involved in the case has been the subject of suspicion at one time or another. But who is lying, and who is telling the truth? This is Tom Brown, A Killer Among Us, Part 1. Hey y'all, I'm Chris Calvert.
And I'm her husband, Rob Potter. Welcome to Hitched to Homicide.
For better or worse.
Till death do us part.
Welcome back, everybody.
welcome. And one of my very good dear buddies from high school was in Colombia a couple weeks ago. So
Tommy?
Yep, Tommy was there. So bienvenido.
Very nice. Sorry, I'm giggling from the get-go. I have a funny husband. I don't know what to tell you.
I didn't know what I did.
Well, wherever you're listening, be sure to subscribe to Hitched to Homicide. Then like, rate, and review the podcast so other people who love true crime can find us. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. Trying to get through it all quick today.
There you go.
If you want true crime with us all the time, please go join our closed Facebook group, The In-Laws and Outlaws. Go to Facebook, type in H2H. In-Laws and Outlaws, answer a couple questions you're in. Lots of new people. Go join. We love these folks.
They're fun.
I like to post photos and stuff in there. They're just the best group of people you could find.
Yep.
Speaking of finding, you can find us on Instagram at Hitched to Homicide or on X at H2H_podcast. And we also now have a Buy Me a Coffee link if you want to send Rob some coffee. He drinks it every single episode. He's finally over his illness. We both are, even though I still have a runny nose and he had to take steroids to get rid of his cough. We're falling apart at the seams, y'all.
And roid rage. Jeez. God.
Steroids just make me mean. It made Rob hungry.
Yeah.
You can find that link in our show notes. You can also, so you could send him beef jerky, I suppose, too, right?
Absolutely.
He could buy beef jerky with his Buy Me a Coffee money.
Steaks, baked potatoes, whatever.
You can find that link in our show notes. Don't know if I said that or not, but I'm going to cover it again. You can also send us a text. The link to that is at the top of the show notes where it says, send Chris and Rob a text. Keep it clean, y'all.
Yeah, please. They get a little crazy.
Oh, Lord. All right. Well, I watched a documentary on this case a couple weeks ago and was immediately hooked. I was reading a Reddit post and someone said, this case hurts my head. Well, I'm about to hurt everybody's head for 2 weeks in a row because I had to break it up into two pieces.
Okay.
So you're going to be scratching your head for 2 weeks. Before I get started, let me thank some sources. The Canadian Record, ABC Channel 7, Amarillo, Texas. The Facebook group Moms for Tom. The Facebook page Klein Investigations. Texas Monthly. The Texas Tribune. Murder Under the Friday Night Lights. And, yes, I went down that rabbit hole on Reddit.
Okay. Well, you ready?
I am.
Well, let's do it.
Thomas Kelly Brown was born on September 13th, 1998 in Pampa, Texas, like Tampa, Florida, but with a P.
Okay.
Pampa, Texas, spelled exactly the same. His parents are Penny and Kelly Brown. He's the youngest of three boys with two older brothers, Toby and Tucker. Toby Tucker Thomas. Gotta love that.
Yep.
In 1998, the same year he is born, his grandfather, W.C. Kendall, commits suicide near the Lake Marvin campgrounds just east of Canadian, Texas. We're really early on in a two-parter, but I gotta say it now. That's called foreshadowing. I mean, I've barely taken 2 breaths, and I'm getting in the foreshadowing.
Well,
Thomas was called Tom. He went to school in Pampa at Wright Elementary until 2nd grade. Then in 2006, he started school in Canadian, Texas. His parents divorced in 2006, which makes sense. That's when he switched schools. His mother is a teacher in Canadian, Texas.
okay.
Now, Tom's known for being witty and funny. He was everybody's friend. I read that he could work a room. Somebody else can work a room. It's me.
Yep.
I'm kidding.
No, it's true.
But he always had everybody laughing. And he was really fortunate. He loved to play football, and he was on 2 state championship football teams.
Oh, wow.
During his junior year and senior year, he started in the Hemphill County 4-H, where he would advance to state in public speaking. He also served as president of his class for 2 years and was a lifelong member of the First United Methodist Church.
Okay.
Tom had plans to attend college after high school. He wanted to become a broadcaster, a sports broadcaster.
All right.
I always wanted to be Erin Andrews. I know she's younger than me, but when I was, coming up in the ranks, there were no female broadcasting people in sports.
Yeah.
But Chris loves sports. We're getting ready to march into March Madness. And I will be watching basketball like nobody's business, night and day.
Yep.
In the fall of 2006, Tom had it all. It's his senior year at Canadian High School. He's class president. He was about to play the leading role in the school play, The History of Tom Jones. He had been on this football team. He'd always played second string, but suddenly he was playing offensive line and he was a first stringer.
Okay.
Now, somewhere in there, maybe a couple games in, his coach pulled him and somebody else took his spot and he quit the football team.
Why?
Because it was his senior year. He had other stuff I think he wanted to do, and he didn't want to sit on the bench another year.
Okay.
Which makes sense,
Sure.
right?
He wanted to enjoy his senior year.
He wanted to enjoy his senior year instead of sitting on, right? He didn't want to ride the bench.
Riding the pine.
Well, I think that's more basketball, isn't it? The pine bench in basketball. Or maybe I don't know. That probably applies to all 3. Baseball, too.
Yeah, it works for them all.
But he's been filling out college applications. He's getting ready to star in this show. But in October, when he quit the football team, his coach had demoted him. He told his coaches that he didn't want to stand on the sideline like we just talked about. And the thing is, he wasn't particularly upset about it. He had finally made the first string and then they just took it away from him.
Right.
In November, he then broke up with his girlfriend. Her name is Sage Pennington. She's a girl he'd been seeing for a while, but according to his friends, he wasn't particularly upset about that either. Sage was a year older. She was a freshman in college, 2 hours away from him. And Tom said that the long-distance relationship was too hard and that the two of them were going to remain friends. Now, I've read a lot of stuff on Reddit where people are like, all these podcasts and stuff, they always talk about the fact that he played football and he was this and he was that. And so I think they make him out to be this
all-American kind of.
And he is.
Yeah.
But he's not like he's not Roger Staubach. He doesn't have that, he doesn't have that football look to him. He has more of a thespian look to him, which he is because he loves his acting stuff. He loves to do the plays and things like that. So a lot of people were really surprised when they saw what he looked like, which of course I will always post pictures.
Right. And I've met Roger Staubach, so.
I know. He was bless his heart, God rest his soul.
I don't know why I brought that up, but I've met Roger Staubach, and it was very cool.
You're aging yourself.
That's all right.
Just say you were 12 when it happened.
I was 3.
On November 23rd, Tom made plans, it's the night before Thanksgiving, to cruise around the small town of Canadian, which is such an interesting name.
Yeah.
It's this little small town and ranch and farm area that surrounded the Canadian town.
It'd be very confusing. Somebody say, "So where are you from?" Canadian. No, no, no. Where are you from? I'm from Canadian.
The
No.
Canadian, Texas. It's named for the river, but I'm going to talk about that in just a second.
All right.
But it's this really small town. It's surrounded by ranches and farmland. And it's the night before Thanksgiving, and he's going out with his buddies. And that night, he was wearing a black sweatshirt, a black Canadian Wildcats t shirt, his high school, some faded jeans and tennis shoes. His mom gave him her debit card so he could fill up his red 2009 Dodge Durango. And he drove to the Canadian middle school parking lot where he met up with his friends, Caleb King and Michael Castletine.
Okay.
Now, he and his buddies drove what they called Tom's Loop. I did not grow up in a small town. Rob did. I know that just driving around is a thing.
Oh, yeah.
So there's not a, because I guess there's just not a whole lot to do. So you just get in your car and you drive.
Yeah, we'd start down by the courthouse and go up Main Street.
That's scooping the loop, though, isn't it? That's staying in town.
No, you go up the hill and then you go all the way to the north end of town, past Frisch's. Then you do the loop and come back down, go all the way back down south. And then, yeah, that's the loop.
Well, they kind of did something like that.
Yeah.
They called this Tom's Loop.
Okay.
And they drove around, they listened to music, and then finally they stopped at Alexander's for dinner, which is like a little restaurant there in town.
Okay.
By 8 p.m., they're back in the middle school parking lot to meet another friend, Christian Webb, who was home from her freshman year of college for Thanksgiving. But Michael was tired and told him good night. He drives away. Tom and Caleb get into Christian's SUV and started driving around again. So I'm assuming now, instead of doing Tom's Loop, they're doing Christian's Loop.
Okay.
Then they went to what's called the Walking Bridge by the folks of Canadian, Texas, which is an old wagon bridge just outside of town that's part of a hike and bike trail. Now, Tom had a curfew of midnight, and around 11 or 11:15, which, by the way, this is 2016, and his curfew in a small town is midnight. I grew up in a city, and my curfew when I was a senior was 12:30, and we didn't have phones. But I am Gen X, and they just kind of threw us out there, get home.
Exactly.
Come home eventually.
Yep.
But he had a curfew of midnight, and at around 11 or 11:15, the three of them go back to the middle school parking lot, and Caleb left to go home, and Christian and Tom hung out for a little bit, and they talked. And they were making plans for Tom to come over to her house the next day, Thanksgiving Day, to play pool. And they also talked about him visiting her at Oklahoma State. Then Tom gets into his red Durango and drives away. Christian drives away and goes home. When midnight rolled around, Tom's mom, Penny, is looking at her phone and wondering, where is Tom? Because he's not somebody who's ever late.
Right.
And if he was about to miss his curfew, he called home to tell his mom. And again, Gen X, we didn't have that luxury. You either made it home or suffered the consequences.
Exactly.
So Tom is late and no call. So Penny calls Tom and she texts Tom. And then Tom's brother, who was watching a movie at home, tried to call him, Tucker. He tries to call his brother. He tries to text his brother. Tom isn't picking up the phone. He's not responding to the text messages. Radio silence. At 12:30, Penny wakes Tom's stepdad, Chris, and tells him she's going to go look for him. I mean, it is a small town. How far do you have to go, right?
Right, right.
So Penny takes off in her SUV, and Tucker, Tom's older brother, takes off in his SUV. Mom was going into town to look for him, and Tucker was going out on the rural roads. And Penny is afraid, like every mother, she's afraid he's in a ditch somewhere after an accident in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
And he's dying and no one can see him and she's got to get to him.
Right.
After about an hour, Tucker dropped off his buddy who was searching with him and he goes back out again. Then Penny goes home and calls Caleb King, one of the boys Tom was out with that night. He was immediately worried and in turn called Christian and Michael, the whole crew who'd been together that night. Now, Christian is a little less worried than the boys. She tells Penny when they said goodnight that he drove away. Caleb and Michael got in their own cars. They went out to search for Tom on their own, but there's just no sign of Tom anywhere. At 2:30 a.m., Penny called the sheriff's department in Canadian, Texas to report Tom as missing. By the way, there is no local police department. That's how small this little town is.
Wow.
The dispatcher relayed the news to the deputy on duty. His name is Pine Gregory. I love that name, Pine.
He has to be in law enforcement.
And he's got to be in Texas, right?
Yeah.
According to his report, he drove around looking for Tom's Durango and at around 4 a.m. pulled into Penny's driveway. Her last name is Meek. She's remarried. Her new last name is Meek. They pull into the driveway, and he tells Penny, Chris, and Tucker he couldn't find him, and that maybe he'd gone to see Sage, who was home for the weekend. Now, how close knit is a community when the deputy knows who
Who he
the
might
kid
be-
he's
yeah,
looking for, the girlfriend's name is, right?
And that he may have gone to see her.
Right.
Yeah.
So they drive to Sage's parents' house, which is about 8 miles outside of town. No Tom, no red Durango.
Yeah, pretty hard to miss a red Durango.
Yeah, in a very small
Sure.
area.
Yeah.
By 7:30 the next morning, Penny and Tom's stepdad, Chris, were on their way to see Nathan Lewis, the sheriff of Hemphill County, where Canadian, Texas is located. Now, Nathan isn't a bad-looking guy. He's a redhead. You know, I'm partial to those. He's only 32. He's a native of Canadian. His father was the mayor of the town, and Nathan had been working for police departments nearby in his 20s. And just 2 months ago, in September of 2016, he had taken over as the sheriff of Hemphill County, much to Penny's chagrin. We're going to talk about that in just a second.
Okay.
Much to Tom's mother's chagrin. She doesn't like him.
Okay.
Now, being the sheriff is an elected position, and he campaigned on taking down drug dealers in their county. Don't know how many of those there could actually be, but he did start making drug busts as soon as he took office. But he had never handled a missing persons case before.
Okay.
Now, I want to tell you a little bit about a run-in between Tom and Sheriff Nathan Lewis.
All right.
A year before, Tom had been with a bunch of his friends in a nearby town in front of a theater. It's late at night. His friend's dad is the manager at that theater. Sheriff Lewis, who's not the sheriff yet, pulls up and just basically says, "Y'all need to get your butts home." But then he takes Tom, like basically by the collar of his shirt, and puts him in his cruiser or his truck, whatever he's driving.
Right.
And he sort of berates him a little bit, sort of accuses him of trying to break into this theater. And he's like, "We're not doing anything. We just know the guy's dad, who is the manager. We're just hanging out."
Yeah.
And so he harasses him a little bit, and then he lets him go.
Hmm.
And his mom, Tom's mom, Penny, was so angry, she filed a complaint
Gotcha.
about the now Sheriff Lewis.
Which explains why she doesn't like him.
Which explains why she doesn't like him.
Right.
And he's not too fond of her, because who likes the person in town who reports them?
Right.
So once again, he's only been in office since September. It's now November, and he's never handled a missing persons cases before. So he starts flapping his gums about where Tom could be to Penny, and Penny, of course, doesn't like him because she still holds this grudge against him for accusing Tom of trying to break into the theater.
Right.
But according to Nathan, this is the sheriff, when Penny and Chris showed up in his office that Thanksgiving morning, he treated them with respect, but he also thought that Tom was just a high school kid who went out and partied too much and passed out somewhere and did not make it home. So meanwhile, while the sheriff, that's his theory, meanwhile, the whole of this small town had started looking for Tom on their own because they, unlike the sheriff, were worried. So much so that Christian Webb and her father, Trey, who owned a helicopter sales and service company, decided to search for Tom in one of the company's choppers. Now remember, it's Thanksgiving morning.
Right.
Trey Webb was an experienced pilot and got low to the ground to look for Tom's car. He started going over the county and the town of Canadian closely.
And he owns a chopper company?
He owns a helicopters company, yeah, in this small town.
Okay. That's kind of random.
It is. But he's flying really low to the ground
Okay.
because he's very experienced. And he sees Tom's red Durango parked under a small grove of trees across a dirt road from the sewage plant, the water treatment plant.
Right.
And Christian, his friend, Tom's friend, who was searching with her dad, has since said that she didn't even know the dirt road where Tom's car was parked even existed. And she was pretty sure that Tom didn't know that that road existed because they never drove over there. And they drove everywhere in this little town, right? There's nothing else to do.
Right.
So not long after Penny and Chris show up at the sheriff's office, Sheriff Nathan Lewis gets that call that Tom's Durango's been found, and he rushes to the scene, and he and one of his deputies walked around the car, quote, several times looking around. There was nobody in the car. Then we started circling around, kind of looking in the area to see if we could find anything, end quote.
Okay.
No footprints were seen. Had been particularly dry, hadn't rained in a while. Still, Sheriff Lewis thought he saw one light shoe print outside the driver's door and what looked to be a urine mark near the same door. It is the country. You guys are men. You just go wherever.
Yeah.
It's
the beauty of being a guy.
Apparently, but when you're a female and you play golf and the guys are just, off in the woods.
Finding a bush.
Yeah, sometimes I just don't hit the ball straight.
Give me the lumber.
You should be careful.
There you go.
The SUV, this Durango, was unlocked, and there were cans of dip, smokeless tobacco, 2 pairs of football cleats, towels, jumper cables, a pillow, a clown costume, which Tom had worn for a school drama production, his wallet, keys, and phone, and his mom's debit card that he borrowed to get gas. They're all gone. They did find Michael Castletine's debit card in between the front seats where they assumed it had just accidentally fallen the night before. Okay. And there was some dried blood on the inside of the front driver's door by the door handle, like a bloody knuckle. And if you've ever had a kid who played football, our son, he played football and lacrosse from the time he was little. And when it was football season or lacrosse season, he stayed bruised and bleeding all the time.
Yep.
And the inside of Tom's Durango actually sounds a lot like the inside of Luke's Jeep when he was in high school.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Except maybe not the clown costume.
Yeah, exactly. That we know of.
But the cleats and the towel and the jumper cables and
Oh, man.
Yeah.
It was giving Darwin a new theory on evolution in that Jeep.
What can you say about a teenage boy's car? We just, we just stayed out of the car. We didn't drive it.
But see, this is a whole different generation, because my generation, it was all about your car.
Yeah.
And your car was pristine, and it was, jacked up and modified and all this stuff. And
yeah.
Yeah.
I think now if you worried that much about your car, people would probably make fun of you. I think that's probably why it's like, yeah, this is my Jeep. This is my lunked out Jeep. Yeah. It was a really nice car when you did get it.
Yeah, exactly.
But when I read the description of what was in the car, I was like, I know this well.
You've been there, done that.
Been there. And you know what? I can even smell Tom's car.
Yeah.
I can smell it.
Yep, exactly.
But they found this tiny little blood stain. And they realize it's a very old blood stain. It's right by where he would have opened the door with his left hand, the driver's side door. And, he probably was bruised and battered a lot. But they did discover a .25 caliber shell casing on the floorboard. And the sheriff is confused because, according to him, there was nothing inside the car that showed that a gun had gone off. There was no blood spatter, no residue from a gun, like gunpowder. And it's at this point this little town starts to rally. People abandoned their Thanksgiving dinners, and they came out to where Tom's SUV was found and started looking on foot, on horseback, on four-wheeler.
Wow.
And I'll say this about small towns. I've lived in one. You grew up in one. I've lived in one. Especially in farming and ranching towns. They may know all your business. They may be all up in your business. But we're going to see a lot, and we're going to see a lot of that in this story. But when times get tough, they aren't the kind of folks that don't want to be involved. They step up and they want to help.
They
So
sure
it didn't matter that it was Thanksgiving. Everybody's out looking for Tom.
Sure.
Now, the Webbs, the people who own the helicopter business, their son goes up in a second chopper while the dad is still up there looking for Tom. The game wardens showed up with a dog, a tracking dog. He finds nothing. By the way, I saw a documentary where Tom's brother says that no one would ever go to this sewage treatment plant because it smelled bad. And if you've ever been around a wastewater treatment, you know what he's talking about. It stinks.
Yep.
Now, by this time, Tom's dad, Kelly Brown, has driven 40 miles from where he lives outside of Canadian, Texas, to help with the search. And when evening hit, neighbors brought over dinner to Penny and the family. And while they're bringing the pumpkin pie, Sheriff Nathan Lewis is bringing back Tom's SUV. To which I have to say,
Wait, what?
wait, what? You got in it and drove it? Here? Home? And according to Tom's mom, Penny, she asked, why are you bringing the car back? And Nathan Lewis said, quote, well, we're done with it. We don't need it anymore.
Okay.
And Penny knows enough about crime. Everybody listening right now is like going, wait a minute. He
Yeah.
just got in it and drove it back?
Yeah.
Penny knows enough about crime that she asks him, you didn't process it for fingerprints? You didn't do all that stuff? And he simply tells her, quote, well, we don't need it anymore, end quote.
What?
Yeah,
Okay. Suspicious.
totally suspicious. Then the next day, the sheriff's department went back and they got the Durango again
Uh,
and, quote, did everything again, end quote. Don't know what everything is.
yeah.
But it's not until the local school superintendent drops by Penny's house, remember she's a teacher, and asks for Tom's school-issued laptop that they realize Tom's backpack is missing. It wasn't in the car with all that other stuff.
Right.
So they tried to trace the computer, but it was unsuccessful. So why would Tom park at the water treatment plant where it's stinky and his friends don't even think that he knew how to get where his car is actually parked,
Right.
and then take his keys, his wallet, his phone, and his heavy backpack with his books and his laptop? Where's he going with all of this, right?
Yeah.
A few days after Thanksgiving, Sheriff Nathan Lewis called in the bloodhounds from the state prison in Amarillo. You got to know those dogs are really good at what they do. It was giving me Shawshank vibes.
Release the hounds.
Yeah, the bloodhounds from the state prison in Amarillo.
Yeah.
So the dogs go out to the dirt road where Tom's SUV was found and they pick up a scent. And the dogs followed it for almost a mile, but the scent disappeared at the edge of the marsh. And the dogs were like, nope, we got nothing. I mean, they hit the water and they're like, okay,
Yeah.
that's it.
That's not good.
Sheriff Lewis arranged for a grid search where volunteers walked side by side, combing through the area around the treatment plant, but they find nothing. And in all honesty, Tom's family and friends didn't think they would find anything. His friends said he wasn't the outdoorsy kind. He wouldn't trudge through the woods where he was unfamiliar with an area with all his stuff and a backpack. Plus, it was freezing cold that night, and he only had on a sweatshirt.
Wow.
Now in town, the CCTV captured Tom in front of a convenience store on 2nd Street in the middle of Canadian, just after midnight, heading toward his house. But then coming back down the same street a few minutes later. Then around 5:30 a.m., a camera catches the Durango coming through town and heading toward Tom's home, and then again backtracking. Then at 5:56 a.m., the Durango is again picked up by a camera on top of a city-owned building near the water treatment plant. And the Durango was moving slowly along this dirt road, passing through the open gate and parking. And when the headlights go off, it was totally dark and no one could be seen getting in or out of this SUV.
That's too bad.
Now, what seemed like a potential lead only raised more questions. Why would Tom be driving around Canadian in those early morning hours, dodging his family and friends and the sheriff's deputy who are out looking for him during this time?
Yeah.
Why would he drive toward his home? Of all the places he could have chosen to abandon the Durango, why would he pick the water treatment plant? Or what if he hadn't walked into the woods at all? What if someone else was driving his car?
Sure.
Sheriff Nathan Lewis called Penny and Chris into his office to be interviewed again on November 26th, but this time, Brent Clapp, Lewis's chief deputy, who'd been in law enforcement for years, is the guy who conducts the interview.
So they got the clap on this. Sorry.
There's the clap.
There you go.
2 P's.
Okay.
Also in attendance was a Texas state trooper. Now, first they talked to Tom's stepdad, Chris, who basically says his mom takes care of him. I don't know why Tom is gone, which I thought was kind of funny. He's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
His mom deals with him. I'm the stepdad. I don't know.
Right.
Penny told Clapp that Tom's friends, they loved him. And she'd been in contact with his friends and his teachers, and everyone said the same thing, that he was laughing and smiling in the halls and that he was doing great in school. Remember, he just got the lead in the school play, and he's president of the senior class. Now, he did quit the football team, and he broke up with his girlfriend. But, all in all, things are going well.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy that Marsha Brady would have liked because he's a BMOC.
Marsha. Now, Clapp asks Penny where her mind went when she found out that the Durango had been found by the water treatment plant, and she told them she worried that Tom had committed suicide. And when they ask her why, she tells them, quote, because it runs in our family, and I just figured maybe at that point he was distraught about breaking up with his girlfriend, end quote. And when they ask her how he might have killed himself, she said, quote, I figured it would have been like the choking game, end quote. Now, if you're not familiar, that's why he's going, huh? What? If you're not familiar with the choking game or the blackout game, this is where mostly teenage boys have someone intentionally strangle them, or you strangle yourself, and this lack of oxygen leads to a feeling of euphoria. You get a high from it because you have this brief loss of consciousness. You go right to the brink of passing out.
Wow.
And it gives you a high.
Wow.
And this has actually caused a lot of accidental deaths. And Penny quickly moves on from saying this, that she didn't think it was the choking game and that she didn't know much about it. But what she did know was that Tom hated guns. And she had already checked all the guns in the house, and they were accounted for. She'd checked all the medication in the house. It was all accounted for. So suddenly she's backtracking on this idea that maybe he committed suicide.
Okay.
And when Clapp presses Penny again on the suicide theory, she tells him, quote, I was thinking he's a senior. He doesn't really know where he wants to go to college, and he's broken up with his girlfriend. I mean, the kid had a lot on his plate. And so, was suicide completely out of the realm of possibility? No, not really. I don't think it's out of the realm of any of our high school kids to commit suicide at all, end quote.
Okay.
But at the same time, Penny tells him that she didn't think that Tom was depressed and that he didn't commit suicide at all. And my heart goes out to Penny because she's worried about her missing son, and she's got her father in the back of her head who did commit suicide.
Right.
Now, then she tells them that maybe he had gone off to pursue being a professional wrestler.
No countouts, and must be a winner.
This is coming from Penny?
This is coming from the mom. And here's why. He loved wrestling, like WWE. Is that what it is?
WWE.
Okay. He loved professional wrestling. And because he was a football player and athletic, he's tackling people and doing that sort of thing. And he was a thespian. He was quite the actor. He kind of thought that he would be a good professional wrestler. I mean, he's a big guy. He's like 6'1", 180 pounds.
Yeah.
And he could combine these two things that he loved.
And to show my age, Pampero Purpo.
Wait a minute. Impossible. He's doing it, ladies and gentlemen.
Who?
It was a wrestler when I was a kid.
What? What?
Oh, I know, Pampero Purvo, or whatever his name was. I think that was it.
See, now I have to find a picture of this guy.
Yeah. He was a weird looking dude.
But my point is, I realize that that's a little out of the blue, and you're saying, she's kind of all over the place. But I think at this point, she's just telling herself whatever she needs to tell herself to keep going. Because finally she says, I think he's hiding somewhere.
By the way, his name was Pampero Firpo. I just looked it up.
Can you stick with the true crime here?
Oh, look, squirrel.
Squirrel.
Good Lord. Y'all, this is my life.
You started it with the wrestler.
Okay, sorry. Then another one of Lewis's deputies goes to interview Sage, the ex-girlfriend. Her name is Jerry Lynn Ortega. They send the female sheriff's deputy to interview the young girl. And what she learned was that Sage said that Tom liked to occasionally wear men's diapers.
What?
I knew it. I knew you were going to be like, where is this case going?
I mean, I've heard of, believe it or not, I've heard of guys doing this when they go to like Coachella or somewhere like that, so they don't have to.
Or Vegas.
Well, when they get like, up in the front row at a concert and stuff, they don't want to lose their spot, so they just wear a diaper.
Yeah, no, that's not. I think he wears them because he enjoys them.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
And he told her this secret in the spring of 2016 when he was a junior and she was a senior. He was really embarrassed about it, and Sage told Jerry Lynn that she didn't know who knew about this. But I looked this up, and an adult who wears diapers is considered to have something called paraphilic infantilism, which is a desire to wear diapers and being treated like an infant. If you wear diapers and don't want to be treated like a child or an infant, then you may simply have a fetish, much like a shoe fetish or other fetish types. And because you have a fetish, it doesn't mean that you are homosexual. It does, however, sometimes link back to abuse, like the wearing the diapers.
Okay.
It'll sometimes, according to psychiatrists, psychology, I sort of looked all this up, it kind of links back to wanting to go back to a more stress-free time of being a child. So I threw in the homosexual part because when this comes out, that's the first thing people think.
Gotcha.
Is that Tom is gay.
I mean, if you want to go back to your childhood, just build a tree house.
Tree houses are cool. I'd like to have an adult tree house.
Yeah.
I'd go up there, and if I had Wi-Fi, I'd never come down.
Here, let me think about it. Adult tree house, adult diapers. I'm going to take the tree house.
Go for the tree house.
Yeah.
So Penny gets called down to Nathan Lewis's office again after this interview with Sage. And this time, it all started off as routine, like this is an update on the case, until he asked her if she knew that Tom wore men's diapers. And she told him, I have no idea what you're talking about. Where did you get that information? And after this, Penny went home and told her friends and family that if brains were dynamite, Sheriff Nathan Lewis wouldn't have enough to blow his nose. She's really angry about this. She thinks he's an idiot. You called me in to tell me this. We're looking for my son. We're worried about him. And you're telling me that he wore diapers?
Yeah.
Even if he did, what does that have to do with him being gone?
Sure.
So she thought he was trying to trash Tom's reputation as this all-American sweet kid who was nice to everybody. So Penny decides she's going to hire somebody who did know how to find a missing person. Enter private investigator Philip Klein.
Okay.
Philip Klein, who lives near Houston, is known for his ability to solve missing person cases. He'd investigated more than 1,800 cases in the last 25 years and had an 80% success rate. And Penny's like, how much?
Yeah.
How much? Philip had been on shows like Dateline, where, according to Keith Morrison, quote, if you ask him, or even if you don't, he'll tell you that he's one of the best there is at finding people who don't want to be found, end quote.
Wow.
In the Texas Monthly article by Skip Hollingsworth, he calls Phil Klein, quote, cocksure with a penchant for drama, end quote.
What's his point? Jeez.
He's cocksure. I love that.
Yeah.
But Penny wires him money, and Philip Klein packed up his panties and headed for Canadian Texas. And first he meets with the family. Then Philip went to meet with Sheriff Nathan Lewis, but these two don't hit it off. Philip thought Nathan was arrogant and didn't like that he wore golf shirts and a pullover sweater with a cowboy hat and a closely shaven beard. He called him, quote, very arrogant and GQ-ish, end quote.
Okay.
As for Nathan, he thought Philip Klein was a showboat and very full of himself. According to Nathan, quote, all we talked about was how good he was, end quote.
So basically, we got two huge egos battling it out.
Huge egos.
What an ego.
Huge egos. But they did talk about more than that. Philip Klein believed Nathan already made up his mind about what happened to Tom. He told Philip that he thought Tom was gay, had a fetish of wearing adult diapers and peeing in them, and that Tom had run away from his life in Canadian Texas. Now, later, Nathan Lewis is going to deny that this conversation ever happened. According to him, he allowed Philip Klein to study the case files, and that Philip took some notes, and then he left. Then Philip Klein went around and interviewed all of Tom's friends and family. He asked Tom's friends if he smoked weed, if he ever used meth, was he extremely attracted to girls, and he asked them all about the last time they saw Tom. Caleb King told him, quote, he was talkative. There was no sign of him being upset at all, end quote. When Philip speaks with Sage, he asks her, did you think it was weird that he liked to wear diapers? And she said, yeah. But she didn't tell him she
not
thought.
at all. Jeez, what a stupid question is that?
Yeah, you're asking a 19-year-old. Do you think it's weird that your ex-boyfriend wore diapers?
That's what I'll remember out of this entire episode.
Well, remember I said your head was going to hurt. So it's going to start thumping soon. Your head's going to start thumping soon.
As long as I don't get diaper rash.
But she says, yeah, I thought it was weird, but she didn't tell him that she thought it was weird or inappropriate because it bothered him, and, quote, he thought he was a freak because of it, end quote. She's being very kind to him.
Sure.
And according to Sage, he already felt bad about it. There was no reason for her to try to make him feel worse about it.
Right.
Then Philip discovers that Tom had also told Christian Webb about the diaper thing. He told her that he really liked it, and it gave him pleasure. Now, Penny, his mom, Tom's mom, did finally acknowledge that Tom had worn diapers in the 5th or 6th grade that he had taken from his toddler cousins, but she said that was it, and there was never anything else about it. But Sage encouraged him to speak to someone about the diaper wearing thing. But Tom is the one who broke up with Sage. They see each other on November 22nd at a Canadian high school basketball game, but don't speak. He texts her saying he felt like a loser and that he was sad. She texted him back saying, you're not a loser, you're not sad. And again, the following night, the night he disappears, she texts him again, and he never replies. Now, Philip Klein, the private investigator, asked all of his friends if they thought or if he'd ever talked about suicide with them. And they all said no more than like anybody else, you know, like I'm going to kill myself if I don't get an A on this test or, you know, that kind of thing.
Sure.
And Klein told the kids that he, too, didn't think that Tom had committed suicide.
Right.
He floated the idea that Tom had been on the dark web in a sexual fantasy room or something like that and had agreed to meet up with somebody nefarious. But he said bye to his friends at 11:15, knowing he had to be home in 45 minutes. Or Klein said to Tom's friends that maybe he was meeting someone he knew, and for some reason that person had murdered Tom, driven the Durango to an unknown area to dump his body, then parked the car at the water treatment plant.
Well, and I do have to interrupt for a second because when they had the hound dogs out there, you said that they stopped at the edge of the marsh.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, well, why didn't they investigate around the marsh?
Good question.
Yeah.
Good question.
All right.
And, how can this private eye, how can Philip float this idea that he's going to go meet this guy? He stops, he stops hanging out with his friends at 11:15.
Yeah.
So he's not going to have time to go meet somebody for some nefarious reason and get home by midnight.
Right.
Yeah. The gossip mill at this point is running like crazy.
If you can't say anything nice about anybody, come sit by me.
Philip Klein thought Tom had met with foul play. He said he was putting together a whole team of investigators to crack the case, and he brought in another private investigator, Jane Holmes, just like Sherlock Holmes, who was from Atlanta, and she had a thick southern drawl from Georgia.
Georgia.
Not to be outdone, Nathan Lewis and his chief deputy, Brent Clapp, they called the FBI and the Texas Rangers to come to Canadian Texas to sift through the evidence, who also start questioning Tom's friends. So Tom's friends are getting questioned by everybody.
Yeah. Sounds like Canadian Texas doubled in population all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, these poor kids, they're getting it from everybody, from all sides.
Right.
But when the police and the Rangers start talking, this one friend of Tom's, something that she said stuck with them. He had told a friend, Macy Patterson, that Tom had once said how easy it would be to disappear from Canadian Texas as long as you didn't use a cell phone, a credit card, or anything else that was traceable. So maybe they thought Tom, this 18-year-old who's getting ready to be the star of his play, has skipped town and hitchhiked his way to somewhere else, leaving everything behind. But they can't find those things that they're saying he left behind.
Right.
Penny is called back into Sheriff Nathan Lewis's office to meet with the Texas Rangers. She came with her husband, Chris, and her ex-husband and Tom's father, Kelly. They asked Penny if there was a chance that Tom was gay. And one of the Texas Rangers, according to Penny, said to her, quote, "I think that your son just ran off. The great news is that he's alive, and when he wants to talk to you again, he'll pick up the phone and call you," end quote. So they're kind of like,
Yeah.
we're going to just wash our hands of this.
We solved this.
Yeah, he's gay. He ran away.
Yeah.
When he wants to find you, he will.
Right.
And when Penny asked them why they thought Tom was gay, they told her, quote, "Well, friends," end quote. And Penny goes, "What friends?" And they tell her, "We can't divulge that."
What?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
After the holidays and in early 2017, Sheriff Nathan Lewis goes on the area's popular locally owned radio station. It was
WMBR.
It was the #1 station, by the way, and there was a show hosted by a guy named Chris Samples. He's the host of this talk radio show.
Okay.
And Tom's disappearance was well known far and wide, and Chris Samples had been following the case closely. So Nathan goes on this show, and when Chris Samples asks him if there was still a chance that Tom could or would be found, Sheriff Nathan Lewis said, quote, "It's absolutely possible. Looking over everything that we have found through the young man's home, through his vehicle, and talking to friends and close confidants has led us to believe that Mr. Brown left on his own. The young man did leave voluntarily, and somebody did help him out. Somebody does know where Mr. Brown is, absolutely, but we have not found anything at this point giving us direction on who he left with," end quote. To which I say,
What the hell, man? What the hell in hell?
what the hell?
I know. Good Lord. Well, you just covered all your bases.
What the hell? You went on a radio show and just spouted conjecture. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
Oh, man.
On the opposite end of this is Philip Klein and his theories, and he doesn't have any evidence to back up his thoughts either. The owner of the Toot and Totem, the Panhandle's go-to convenience store chain,
Toot and totem.
the Toot and Totem, dangled a $5,000 reward for whoever could help the sheriff track down Tom, whether that meant bringing him home safely and soundly or just proving that he wasn't around anymore. The tips come rolling in. One caller swore they saw Tom grabbing a snack at a Chicken Express in Amarillo. Another was convinced they spotted him sipping an overpriced latte in a Clovis, New Mexico coffee shop. But just like your ex's promises, none of the leads went anywhere.
Well, the other thing, too, is if he didn't take any credit cards or anything with him, what's he using for money?
Good point.
Okay.
But there are no texts, no phone pings, no evidence, just radio silence. Tom hadn't just vanished. He was a straight up ghost at this point.
He was off the grid.
Then one day in mid-January 2017, a worker for an electric company was on a desolate road east of Canadian known as Lake Marvin Road. It leads to the reservoir. A man sees a backpack sitting about 5 feet off the road behind a barbed wire fence and propped up under a tree. Later, when he heard about the Tom Brown case, he drove back out there. He opened the backpack. All true crime people are like, don't touch it.
Stop it.
He opened the backpack. Inside were books and papers with Tom's name on them and his school-issued laptop. It looked like the backpack had been put there underneath this tree, 5 feet off the road, intentionally.
Right.
Now, this is 4 miles away from where his car is, which means he would have had to walk this 4 miles in the dark, in the cold, without a coat, at 6 a.m. through the marsh and the thigh-high Canadian River before hitting acres of tall grass while carrying this very heavy backpack.
Sounds plausible.
And there was no...
Sorry.
Yeah, and there was no way somebody had just like thrown it from the car. It was too heavy,
Right.
and it was propped up under the tree like it was staged. Now, Tom could have walked out of the water treatment plant and back on the road to avoid the other conditions, but that would have been an 8-mile walk, and he would have only had an hour and a half to get there before the sun came up, and the town and his family were already out looking for him.
Right.
And why did he go to Lake Marvin Road anyway, or leave his backpack under this tree? Well, Philip Klein thought it meant foul play, that someone else had placed the backpack there, not Tom, someone who was disposing of evidence.
Okay, see, I'm a musician, so you have to speak slowly and use crayons when you discuss things with me. I think I could have figured that out.
Yep.
And I'm
Well,
not
you're
afraid-
one half of a true crime podcast team, honey. We know things.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I'm not an investigator, but I play one on a podcast.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, at this point, Philip Klein goes on the Chris Sample Show, and he talked all about himself and how great he was at his job and how many kids and missing persons he'd found and all the celebrities he'd worked with and for, and the people in this little town and the surrounding areas. They're all about it as they hear all about this Klein guy.
Right.
At one point, he threw, while he's on this radio show, he threw some not so subtle shade at Sheriff Nathan Lewis, telling the listeners that something awful had happened to Tom. Quote, "We believe at this point in time that we have no credible evidence that Tom Brown is a runaway. We have completely vetted the opportunities for Mr. Brown to run, and we just don't see it based upon the evidence that we have at this time. If he did leave the area, he left the area with no money, the clothes on his back, no car, no means or the ability to garner any money other than to go somewhere and get a job," end quote, which is exactly what you said.
Right.
And when Philip goes on this Chris Sample show more than once, and even at one point he says, quote, "We do believe that we have established some possible suspects in the city regarding some possible nefarious activities, and we're exploring those," end quote. He told the listeners that if you know something, you need to say something, because if the case goes in the wrong direction, you could be charged with a crime for withholding information.
Wow.
So now he's trying to scare something out of whomever might know anything.
Right.
And guess what? Nobody comes forward with new information.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Then Philip brought in a cadaver dog from Georgia named Chance. And the townspeople are watching this unfold with bated breath as this dog went up and down the streets of Canadian Texas, sniffing around the parking lot and the bleachers at the high school stadium, the area where the backpack was found. And then Chance was taken to Tom's Durango, which was parked in Penny's driveway. And when Chance got to the car with the doors open, he sat, which meant he had hit a cadaver scent.
Wow.
Now, even though Chance got a hit, there was still no evidence that he had died or he had died in this car. There's no blood. There's nothing like that they can see with the naked eye.
Right.
And new rumors now started that Philip Klein was now investigating more of Tom's friends. And there were people in town who thought that Michael Castletine, whose debit card was found in the car, had something to do with Tom's disappearance. So what's happening is, as nothing is happening, as they're not getting any new leads, they're starting to look at these kids a little bit harder. And they've already just browbeat these kids. And they're going back to do it again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the people in town are like, well, must be Michael.
Yeah.
Well, Michael smoked pot, and he sometimes sold weed to other students, something that he confessed to Sheriff Lewis when he was first interviewed back when Tom went missing in November. Michael said that Tom didn't like drugs. He hated them, in fact. And remember, Michael left after they had dinner. He went home at like 8 o'clock, and Michael's mom backs him up on this.
Right.
Then the folks in town pointed the finger at Chris Jones, a kid who was on the football team who was living in Canadian with a family friend until this friend moved away. Then Chris moved in with the football coach. He was a really good football player, and the coach didn't want to lose him. He went to bed around 10 p.m. the night before Thanksgiving at the coach's home. But Chris was arrested a month after Tom disappeared for fighting and fracturing another kid's orbital socket.
Jeez.
But no one had anything more than that, and Chris liked Tom. They were teammates on the football team.
Okay.
It seemed everybody had a theory. And the people in this little town loved to discuss those theories. Anonymous donors added to the Tootin' Totem $5,000 reward, taking it to $40,000.
Wow.
Then the rumors really got bad. There were anonymous letters showing up at the sheriff's office, theories about meth dealers and money launderers that Tom had discovered, and they killed him to keep him quiet. There were still Tom Brown sightings in Kansas and Arizona. Nothing is panning out. Meanwhile, Sheriff Nathan Lewis is ready to throw some shade back at Philip Klein, so he goes on the radio show. I can't even tell you how many times these people go on this radio show.
Good Lord.
He goes on the radio show saying that there was absolutely no evidence that someone at Tom's high school had direct knowledge of what happened. Quote, "We don't have any evidence laying out in front of us saying that an assault or a homicide occurred," end quote. He also said that there was no evidence that supported Klein's theory that someone other than Tom was driving his car at any time during the night of Thanksgiving Eve, that the driver had walked back into town after parking the car at the water treatment plant, or that the backpack was planted by Tom's killer. But while Nathan is saying all of this on the radio, he fails to mention that the Texas Rangers and the FBI actually thought they had a suspect. Not someone who hurt Tom, but helped him to disappear. She was one of the last people to see Tom on the night he went missing. It was Christian Webb.
Oh, wow.
Next week, the feds start trailing everybody. More wild allegations and rumors are thrown around. Everyone's going on the radio show. But where is Tom Brown? And for now, that's all I have to say about that.
You know, there's a couple things about this, and it revolves around the truck. If he indeed, met with a demise,
Sure.
that placing that truck out there by the waste management or whatever that was.
Wastewater treatment?
Yeah, the wastewater treatment. That's a perfect place because nobody ever goes out there. They don't see it. But on the same token, if he wanted to disappear, again, that's a great place to park the truck.
Yeah, and think about it. There's no way they would have found that truck. No one's driving down that road looking for him. And all of his friends said he didn't know this. We didn't even know this place existed. We didn't even know this area existed. You know, how to even get back here. The only reason they found it was because Trey Webb, the guy who owned the helicopter company,
Right.
got up in the air and was flying low to the ground and
Right.
boom,
And
saw
there-
it. That's
there
the
it was.
only reason. That's the only reason they found that truck so soon.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next week.
Ah, there's more to come.
All right. Well, in the meantime, let's do a little bless your heart.
Well, bless your heart.
All right. Number one, that'll teach them.
Okay.
A woman in New Mexico robbed a Subway where she worked.
Like the sandwich shop, Subway?
You got it.
Oh, okay.
She wore a mask, but one of her coworkers recognized her voice.
Oh my gosh.
And when the cops caught her, she said she did it to teach her coworkers a lesson.
Oh my gosh.
She was
Yeah.
arrested for robbery.
She's like, it was a test.
Exactly.
I wasn't robbing anybody. It was just a test and they failed.
They failed miserably.
Yeah.
All right, number two. They'll never notice.
Okay.
A 30-year-old man has admitted to robbing a bank in Missouri earlier this year.
Okay.
Okay, we've had this kind of case before, but just wait. Okay, here we go. He did it by handing a teller a note written with a pink highlighter.
That's
Okay?
kind of hard to read, but
Well,
okay.
The paper he used was actually on the back of his birth certificate.
Again, another guy with a birth certificate?
But wait, this is where it gets better. He was also wearing an ankle monitor from a previous court issue, so it was very easy to prove he was there.
Seriously?
No, wait, it gets even better.
No.
He gets busted, and but the total amount taken in the heist was $754.
Bless his heart.
I know.
See, people, this is why you leave your birth certificate with your mom even when you're 40 years old.
Yeah. All right, number three, and finally, your wish is my command.
Okay.
A Florida woman is behind bars after getting exactly what she asked for during an encounter with a police officer.
Uh-oh.
Allegedly, 30-year-old Chelsea Leahy approached a corporal from the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office and asked, quote, "Can you arrest me? I have drugs."
Officer, can you put me in handcuffs?
Oh my gosh. Investigators say she then pulled out two small baggies from her pockets, handed them to the officer, saying that they contained meth. The test kit came back positive, and she got what she wished for. Leahy was arrested for possession of a controlled substance, booked.
Do you think she was just looking for a place
I think she
to
was
stay, or she was high and like the officer? I mean, this is Florida, so
Yeah,
do you think she was like, "Ooh, he's cute. Hey, officer,
I'm going check.
can you handcuff me?"
Oh my gosh. Oh, bless her heart.
Bless her heart.
Yeah, there's your stupid criminals this week. Duh.
Well, if you have a bless your heart or you know somebody's heart who needs blessing, all you got to do is go to Hitch to Homicide. When you get there, there's a pull-down menu, and while you're there, you can also suggest a case
Do it.
or tell us about your brush with true crime.
Yes.
That's my amazing husband out there.
And that's my beautiful bride in the booth.
Join us next week for part 2.
Dude. Bye, y'all.